I've been using the RED KOMODO now for about a year, and I probably spent as much money on accessories for it as I did for the actual camera body. In this video I will go through why I got it and what I think about it after using it for a year. So let's do this. Why did I get this camera? Well, I was choosing between the FX6 and the RED KOMODO, and for my workflow and for the type of films that I make, which are mainly reality documentaries with a small team, the FX6 would probably have been the more logical choice. But I decided to get this one, and it is for a very specific reason. I started my filming career basically with a video camera, and then I upgraded to the first Canon 7D and then the 5D Mark II, and I've been doing that track ever since with DSLRs, mirrorless cameras. At one point I got a Canon C300, which I thought would be the big savior of everything, but I continued to use it the same way. And getting an FX6 at this point would be more or less continuing the same track, and I wanted to do something different. It was time to change things, and that's why I got this camera. And this forced me to learn a completely new way of making films.
I don't know what to do yet, but I'll figure it out.
The top arguments for getting this one is the red raw, obviously. The colors are beautiful and you can really work with them and tweak them. I'm not a colorist at all, but I love playing around with the grading of the footage. The other one is the global shutter, which is kind of minor detail really, but it gives something to the image that you don't have when you have a rolling shutter. Also, it's very flexible. This looks kind of big, but the camera body is actually very small, so you can build it just the way you want it. And this leads me straight into why you should not get this camera. Building it and making it work for you is project all of its own. It's not like you get this camera and you go out filming. I spent probably 40 hours watching YouTube reviews and finding different little things to put on there to make it work the way I wanted. That cost a lot of money that you don't expect when you start thinking about it. There are batteries, there are handles, monitors, more handles and small metal parts that cost a fortune for what it really is, but they come in very, very useful. Also, it doesn't have any stabilization in it, and the autofocus with Canon RF lenses, which I have a few, works kind of, but it's not really there. It's a lot more work to do films with this camera, but I think the result of the image coming out of it is worth everything. If I had gotten an FX6 instead, I would have picked it up, screwed it together, and everything would be there. But that would just mean doing more of what I've always been doing, so I decided to go for this one. If you want to make something that looks spectacular and you're ready to work for it, then this could be the right camera for you. But now let's get into how I rigged it out and what I think about it. The wing grip from RED is already on here, which means I have a handle like that. Now let's build it. Done! Super flexible travel camera with a 35mm lens on it. But this screen is completely useless, so we have to build it out a little bit more. But this is pretty nice. So cute.
What should we call this cutie?
Growing up quickly. We'll add some more stuff to it. Still pretty cute actually. Put this rail here. And we can take the PORTKEYS monitor, which is very nice because it has this antenna, which can actually make it control the camera. And the best thing of all is that since this camera only has a rec button down here, I've programmed the F1 button on the PORTKEYS monitor to be my rec button. This battery plate from Wooden Camera is very good for the V-mount batteries, but the most genius thing is that it uses the RED's own power cord system to power the camera from the battery, and it has this little input where you can charge the camera and the battery while you're running it. So it's actually a hot swappable power solution, and you can also use one of RED's own batteries at the same time. Click it into one of the battery slots, just like that, and then put it up there and you plug the power in the camera from the battery plate. So what you can do is if you put this battery on now, if I now plug the red power cord in here, I can remove this battery without losing power to the camera or the monitor. So even if this one runs out of battery, the camera will automatically use this one. Genius. And this is our camera friend, the RED KOMODO, of course. We'll use the Canon EF to RF adapter 0.71x, which means we go full frame. And let's put the lens on there as well. SMALLRIG follow focus system with a handle, fantastic for solo shooting work. This is not sponsored by SMALLRIG, but I wish. And the motor goes from up here for a very, very specific reason. And that is, I can lift this whole thing off this. This can be mounted on the tripod, or it can be just a shoulder rig that you can pick up when you need it. And then you can just put the whole camera on there. And then you can move this handle down here. You have your shoulder rig. Of course you have to adjust it for your size. Last but not least, this camera does not have built-in ND filters. One of the favorite things I've seen so far is this POLARPRO BASECAMP system, MATTEBOX. Just put the step ring on the lens, put this on, and then the filters comes in and out of here. There's also a 2 filter system that I have, but I normally just use the ND plus mist. Now comes my favorite part, which is the cable shit. Because it looks so nice now. Why do we need cables? The SDI, plug it into the monitor. Power for the monitor goes from the D-taps of the battery plates. And then you need to figure out how to run this cable without it interfering with everything. There is a million ways you could run this cable, and this is probably not the optimal one. There we go. USB-C for powering either the focus motor or the focus handle. And this one goes straight into the battery. The battery also has a USB-A port, so we use that for the motor. So that's it. This is what it looks like when it's fully built out. But the beauty of this is if you have the base on a tripod, you can unscrew this button, boom, and then you go handheld, and everything, including the handle and focus pulling, comes with it. It's a really nice setup. Yay! So what I've learned in 1 year of using this is, I think the biggest thing is about the light metering and how to expose correctly. It's a complete shift of mindset. When you're filming in Red RAW, the only thing you're using the ISO for is actually to expose the screen correctly. What you're actually using for exposure are the traffic lights, and getting this concept into my head was a bit hard at first, and I ended up with some overexposed images and some underexposed images. It's really hard when you're out there on set and it's a stressful day. You're looking at the screen and it's like, no, it's too dark. Or the histogram, it's too dark. We're too much in the low lights. And then when you look at the traffic lights, they look okay. At that point, it's really hard to not just crank up the ISO, because that's what I've been doing for so many years. It doesn't help. If I crank up the ISO, the only thing that changes is how the image is viewed on screen. It doesn't let any more light in. After figuring it out, it's a wonderful way of working because you have so much control. Just because you have Red RAW doesn't mean you don't need as much light. This camera is not very light sensitive. You can do a lot with the RAW image in post, but if you don't have a good lighting setup when you're shooting, it doesn't change the fact that you have a bad lighting setup in post. The RAW doesn't fix that. So I've been working my ass off to learn to light properly and work with lighting setups like this setup here, for example. We built this candy shop setup just for learning purposes and trying to figure out how we can do things in different ways. So this camera has inspired me to learn more about lighting, and I now think that lighting is the most fun part of making a scene. I never did this before. Before it was mostly like putting up a big softbox light in front of the face, lighting the face, and boom, clap, and you're done. So if you want to get inspired to learn a new way of working, this camera might be good for you. The next thing I want to talk about is the flexibility of the camera, because right now it looks kind of big, and I can make it even bigger, but you can strip it down all the way to its little box and put a lens on and use it like this too. And that flexibility is really good, because when traveling, bringing this along and all the gear that's needed, and it just gets too heavy too quickly. So then it's really good to be able to strip it down to its core parts and still be able to use all the benefits of the camera.
We are using our huge production van to swap lenses. I'm gonna put this 1835 on instead. Makes more sense in here. And maybe we'll change back later. What do you think about this?
Another reason not to get this camera is the data intensity, because each project now easily goes up in the 1, 2, 3 terabyte range. Managing this amount of data when you have 3 or 4 projects in the making at the same time, it's a lot of data to manage, and I haven't figured out a good NAS solution yet for this, but we'll get there eventually. So depending where you are in your filmmaking journey, if you should get this camera or not, this is not a recommendation from me, because adding this camera to your workflow will also add a lot of hurdles that you have to overcome each time you want to do a project. It takes more time, it's more resource intensive, it's a lot of building to do, and every shot takes a longer time. When I'm in a fast moving environment, I prefer to use my Canon R5 for that, and I have the luxury and privilege to have both. But if you're only getting one camera, you should get one for the type of production that you're doing. You really have to want to make the things that you want to make to use this camera. And I think this is very important, because I know it looks kind of nice and it looks impressive. Yeah, clients are impressed if you come with a RED camera, but that's not the reason to get it. You should really know that this is what you need for the type of projects that you make. For me, it's been a journey learning how to use it, but it's a beautiful, wonderful tool that will allow you to really create the best out of each situation. So that's my closing recommendation for you. And whether you're curious about getting one of these or the new RED KOMODO X, which is even better, or if you just like watching gear reviews, let me know if you have any questions, because I'm happy to share everything on this channel, and I want you to get started on your own projects, whether you're using this or an iPhone. I don't care. It's about the story anyway. This is just my tool to be able to leverage the story in a better way. Subscribe and like and follow, and everything that everybody is saying about the stuff you should do in the end of the videos, because this is the end of this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.